Welcome to the Speak by Design podcast, where we study personal style, message structure, and message strategy so you can become a consistently compelling force. Let's dig in. We are now moving into vocal presence, and we will have 3 lessons on voice because it's so important. Great leaders are great speakers, and it is very difficult to be a great speaker if you don't have a good voice. And by good, I mean one that is true to who you are, that shows your emotion and conveys credibility. Think for yourself, what kind of voices do you admire? Do you like people who are loud and booming, or do you like quiet speakers? Do you like fast? Do you like slow? Do you like a lot of variety, or do you like something more monotone? Do you like downward intonation? Do you like unexpected variety and twists and turns in somebody's voice? Do you like weight, or do you like the sound to float? All of this is under your control as the speaker. But ask yourself, what do you prefer in a voice? Because what you like in a voice is different than what I like. And just because I say I don't like the sound of their voices doesn't mean they have bad voices. That's in the ear of the beholder. You get to like the voice you like. You also get to design the voice you want. And that's what I want to make sure you know how to do. Now, as we get older, unfortunately, our voices will go into an atrophy and turn into that old age voice. You know, the voice that you hear when you speak to someone who's elderly, where their voice does not sound as strong. And that's because the diaphragm is not supporting the sound as well as it could. And it is also through enormous amounts of dehydration. You can take care of your voice by drinking water, hydrating, giving it humidity as well. Steam is great for the voice, and lots of good airflow. Sometimes if we're concerned about how our breath smells, we hold back our exhale and we don't use our breath with our phrasing. And then you are constraining the vocal cords and you are fatiguing them. But Stephanie, why does this matter for work? Well, people make a lot of assumptions about one another based upon how they sound. We know what credibility sounds like to us. We know what confidence sounds like. When you are meeting somebody for the first time, you make a lot of assumptions about that person just by the way their voice sounds. You make assumptions about their attitude. Are they in a good mood? Are they in a bad mood? Are they happy, sad, mad? You also make assumptions about their aptitude. Can this person keep up with me? Are they tracking with me? Do they seem to understand what I'm talking about? And if the other person is hesitating in their voice, you start to think that they don't have the aptitude, the ability to keep up with you. And we also make assumptions about people's competence. Are they going to be able to follow through and do the work that you've just delegated to them or been talking about? We also make assumptions about their motivations. Is this person excited to help me, motivated to help me? Can I hear delight in their vocal tone? And then finally, we make assumptions about that person's leadership potential based upon how they sound. The voice carries so much in it. So let's break it down. There are 6 elements of voice: pitch, pace, volume, variety, weight, and direction. Let's break down each one of these. Let's start with pitch. Pitch is either low or high, low or high. And low pitches we associate with high credibility people. Why is low pitch so desirable? Because it sounds relaxed. It sounds at ease. It sounds unpressured. It is really difficult for any of us Doesn't matter your age, your gender, any of us will struggle finding a low pitch when we are in a state of excitement or fear. When we are emotional, it's hard to find this low pitch. So try this right now with me. Hello, how are you? Okay, so that is pitch. Let's go on to pace. Pace is how fast or slow you speak. I tend to be a slower speaker. I like that about my style. I think it makes me sound more thoughtful and wise. There are times, if I've had too much caffeine, where I do start to speak rather fast, and I can tell people are not catching the real meaning of what I'm saying. Ask yourself, are you speaking too fast? Are you speaking faster than your audience can keep up with you? Are you speaking faster than all of your counterparts? Because if you are, you may be coming off as overeager and too excited. What you want is you want to be able to grow excitement. So I often tell people to begin slow and then start speeding up as you get into the rising action of your message. Let's suppose you had a 10-page deck you were walking through. Start slow and then gradually increase your speech rate to show excitement and use that change in pace to help the audience stay with you and stay engaged. But there is a tipping point on both sides. You can be too slow. A good goal for all of us is to match the pace of our audience. And because that highlights connection. If you are disjointed and you are much faster or much slower than your audience, it will feel like you're disconnected, even if you are not. Pace is really important. So here are some tips for how to manage your pace. Observe your punctuation. Concentrate on where the comma would go in the sentence and use that for your pause. And when you have a period mark or a final exclamation point or a question mark, do a full stop. And you can even think, stop, and stop yourself before running into the next sentence. This also gives you a chance to breathe, which will make your vocal tone sound better. All right, so pace is very important. Do you remember that funny comedian who was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and he was a teacher who kept looking for Ferris, and he would say, Bueller, 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 and he was so slow and completely monotone. Only one pitch was he using. And we laughed. We thought it was hilarious because the voice was very unattractive and lifeless. Who on earth could pay attention to a message, to a lesson with a teacher who had a voice like that? The voice lures us in or repels us. And that was a voice that was repellent. All right, pitch, pace, volume. We associate high volume or loud voices with confidence. When somebody has a loud voice, it is apparent to us that they believe in what they're saying. They are committed and convicted in their message. Now, over time, we listen to the substance of what they're saying and we may decide they're not credible. But our initial first impression when we hear a louder voice is that that person must have confidence. That is why quieter voices and quieter colleagues often get overlooked. For first impression management, always aim to be a louder voice. On occasion, in private coaching, I will encourage people to make it a competition and seek to be the loudest voice at the beginning of the meeting, even if it is for your introduction, so that you say, "Hello, I'm Mark. Great to be with you today." And say it with more energy and volume, loudness than the other people. Then you can temper your volume and say, "What are we talking about today?" Just by starting out loud and then going to your softer voice, you still gave that initial impression of being a big energy force, of being a bigger personality. It's the same thing when you get up in front of a large audience. Test the microphone with a big welcome. Hello, everyone. Before we get started, and using your big voice then allows you to say, all right, take a seat. We're about to begin. And then you can go small. But because you started big, that confidence and energy gets people to be quiet and gets people to sit down. And you can do that. You have the power to do that with your voice. All right, pitch, pace, volume, variety. Now, variety gets into the contrast piece about your voice. And we've talked about contrast and intensity. Contrast in the voice, in your pitch, in your intention, in your tone, does make the audience listen better and gets them feeling more emotions. If there is a lack of variety, we call that style being bound, B-O-U-N-D, a bound voice that only uses a few notes. Right now, I'm in my bound voice. You can't really tell what I think or feel about what I'm saying because I'm not using much variety. But as soon as I do, as soon as I put more variety into my tone and I allow my voice to go wherever it wants to go, then you have a deeper meaning associated to the words that I'm saying. Here's an example. Mike, take out the trash. Mike, take out the trash. Mike, take out the trash. See how different those are? That is the relationship message. And that's my relationship with the trash and my relationship with Mike that are coming through my vocal tone. But sometimes at work, you need to be neutral. You need to show no emotion, and a bound voice is very valuable to you. It's because it's factual and it shows great self-control. There are times, though, when you need to show more emotion because you're trying to persuade or pressure your audience in some way. And then a monotone voice does nothing. Then we need to hear the excitement, the delight in the voice, or we need to hear the gravity in the voice. Assess for yourself if you need more variety or less variety. Sometimes your functional role has an expected voice with it. For example, if you are in sales or business development, we immediately associate that you must have a more passionate, emotive voice. You probably use vocal variety quite often. But if you're in a field where you're more focused on risk management or helping control problems or cost, let's say you're in finance, we would associate a more controlled, bound voice with those roles. That doesn't mean you should follow that mold, but there are some expectations in how those voices sound based upon their role. For example, in sales and business development roles, we expect someone to have more vocal variety than we would expect somebody in risk management or finance to have. And when we're coaching a CEO and CFO, and we're making sure that they are yin and yang to one another and well balanced, we usually encourage the CEO to use more vocal variety and the CFO to use less. Now, if the CFO is trying to signal that he or she is the obvious choice for CEO, we will break that convention and say, please use more vocal variety. Think about the role that you want and the voice that would go with that role. If that role was perfectly powerful and had maximum influence, how would they sound? Then the next two things to think about are weight and direction. So weight is how heavy the words sound. Do they sound like they are being pressed out of the mouth? So right now, I am making my words sound heavy. When you think of Darth Vader, James Earl Jones in Star Wars had a very heavy sound. Luke, I am your father. That is my best attempt at that. But see how heavy and pressured that sounds. I'm not encouraging you to use that voice in town halls or in media interviews, but when you need something to sound different, when you need something that you've said 10 times to sound like the first time you're saying it, use a different vocal style. And maybe that means saying it with more weight. For example, the word strategy gets thrown around all the time. And one way you can make your strategy sound different is press that word out of your mouth. We associate vocal weight with higher credibility because it sounds so convicted, and it is slower at the same time. It must be done in contrast to a lighter weight to stand out. There are people who have higher weight all the time, but they don't have a lot of vocal variety, and they usually get criticized for having a sleepier sound. Most people speak with a medium weight. Occasionally, you'll meet someone who has a very light weight. So I'm going to demonstrate how that sounds. It's very careful, it's breathy, and it doesn't have any kind of friction to it. It doesn't sound bold. It's very ethereal. Now, this vocal style, anytime I hear it, it's so pleasant on the ear. There is something very inviting about that sound, but it is not commanding at all. There is a place for it, though, and I would call that floating your words out of your mouth or gliding, letting the words glide out of your mouth. It can make you sound very elegant, sophisticated, and there are lower pitched voices who can do it too, where it sounds like velvet. But it's one of those voices you want to use when you need to calm people down. Floating the words really helps. Now, the last element we're going to talk about is the direction with which you speak. So we spoke about pitch, pace, volume, variety, weight. Now the last element is direction. And direction can be the intonation in your phrasing, but it can also be how well you know where you're going. So for example, if I know where I'm going, I know what my last word will be, I sound more organized. But if I don't know where I'm going and I'm twisting my sound and doing things that even surprise myself, I sound like I'm inventing in the moment. I do not sound as organized and prepared. I do not sound at all rehearsed because it's obvious I'm not. You know, when you can listen to someone and you can tell they are reading, that is because they are so over rehearsed and too perfectly linear in the way that they're speaking. If I spoke like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Even though I changed my variety, I knew where I was going. It was like I was tracing a map. But if I don't know where I'm going and I'm on the journey with you and I'm creating and inventing as I go, you can tell I'm not reading. You can tell it's not that perfect, which is why so many people say, oh, I don't want to memorize anything. I want to only write down bullets. The bullets will help me. I trust myself to make my sentences. And then there are other people who want to write out everything in prose, in paragraphs, practice it out loud, say it walking around their homes, walking forwards and backwards, and getting it down so it's a part of them. The recommendation when it comes to direction is you want it to be linear enough that it is credible and non-linear enough that it doesn't sound like you are reading or overly rehearsed. So my recommendation for this would be add in variety, even surprise yourself. Expect that when you're up in front of that crowd, your voice is going to do something you had not planned for it to do. You're going to repeat a word twice, maybe 3 times. You're going to use a higher voice than you expected to use for one moment. And then you're going to come back down to where you normally like to speak. But you're going to give yourself permission to do those things in the moment without planning so that you have non-linear moments in a speech or message that is mostly linear. Now, what are you supposed to do with these 6 elements? What we encourage people to do is think about each one. Pitch. Do you want to be a lower or higher voice? What are your rules going to be on how you start your meetings? Pace. Can you stay flexible in pace? Do you want to be on the quicker side most of the time or on the slower side most of the time? Where is your middle ground? Do you need to make any changes there? Volume. Can you get a little bit louder, especially for the beginnings of meetings? Or if you are already on the louder side, when can you use a whispered voice to get people listening to you and leaning into you? And then variety. Where and when should you be using more or less variety? Are you using too much and people think you're being playful on a topic that needs more gravity? Or are you using too much gravity on everything because you're so bound and more monotone? And then weight. What words and phrases would benefit from you putting more weight and emphasis on them? And where do you need to lighten up? What if you have been getting defensive on certain topics or you've been letting things trigger you when they come up? Maybe you need to lighten up the voice so that you don't sound as defensive. And then direction. Find that balance between being linear and non-linear so you sound prepared but not like you're reading. All right, those are the ways to think about your voice and to better understand voice, a topic that often has a lot of mystery around it. So today, what can you play with? Which lever, which element of voice do you want to experiment with? And a tiny change could make your audience smile, laugh, lean in, look concerned. Do something different, and do something different today with that lovely, beautiful voice of yours. Have a great day, everyone. If you are enjoying all of these lessons, but now you're hungering to turn all of this into skills and habits that make this work intuitive and natural so that you don't have to think about it, then you want to join Speak by Design University. That's our coaching program that gives you private coaching, group coaching with me, group training, self-paced learning, as well as exceptional networking with other people like you. This program is for managers and above, people whose careers are on fire and they're looking to hit their next level and they want to do that sooner rather than later. Check it out at speakbydesign.com/join. That's speakbydesign.com/join, and you can start with us at the 1st of next month. We hope to see you there.